All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for staying here at the India Economic Summit and for participating in the many conversations that have happened over the past 2 days. And we're here now at the closing. Our co-chairs kind enough to join us here for the closing session. So many thanks to Minister Goyal, to Dipali Goenka, Ajay Banga, and Malvika for being here this afternoon. As I said, we've talked about many things, from digitization to financial inclusion, diversity in the workplace, pollution, several things pertaining to what India needs to do to improve the quality of life of its citizens as well as enhance its economic power. So let me try and crystallize this to some actionable agenda that we can take forward post this summit. And Minister Goyal, let me start by asking you. I remember in the opening that you said that your word for the summit was going to be trust. And you spoke about how that is going to be something that this government will pursue in the manner that it formulates its policy, in the manner that it engages with citizens. So if I could ask you, at the end of what you've heard here, the big takeaways around jobs, around the employing the youth, around education, the many aspects that we've spoken of, what would your actionable agenda be at the end of the summit?
I think if we could just focus on two issues. One is a mindset issue, and the second is an involvement issue. The focus, if it is changed to the narrative becoming outcome oriented, if the narrative, even in our own discourse or in our own thinking, including the media for that matter, is focused on what's gone wrong, we are happy with that. It's great. Because that, as you know, I've always enjoyed getting feedback which helps us improve our work and our effort. But if it is motivated, if it is singularly intended to disrupt the positive environment, then I think that will be pretty much unfortunate for the country. Because somehow in this day and age of 24 hours television, breaking news and all, it's very easy to sensationalize without really bothering about the outcomes. And more often than not, my own experiences, very trivial issues sometimes are sensationalized beyond they really deserve to. And very often, falsehoods are sensationalized with not even an apology. And I'll share a small example. Once one of the pink papers wrote that I have a shareholding of some 20 or 30 crores in a company which had recently had an IPO. Now, the least I would expect a pink paper, which is basically running economic news, is to verify its facts. And a Piyush Goyal name can be verified very easily. Our data is on the website every year as ministers. And if at all, they should have otherwise written that I'm falsifying my data on the that I'm submitting to the Honorable Prime Minister. But it's very easy to write that Piyush Goyal owns 30 crores worth of shares. There must be 500 Piyush Goyals in this country, right? So this kind of sensationalism that is sought to be created, and I'm saying this with full responsibility, often motivated, should change to a more positive mindset where what is wrong you criticize and you take us to the cleaners on that. And what is good for the country, be willing to even say that that is good for the country.
So if I
That's
could,
one part.
Sure.
And the second part is the change that we always talk about, be the change you want to see in the world, make a difference to society. Malvika spoke about it yesterday. I think the more all of us get involved. I was in a program this morning where a gentleman came up to me, said, I have retired from the Defense Military Engineering Services. I said, great, I need help to make footbridges wherever there's large amount of passengers on trains in military precision and military speed. Can you help me? He said, I'd love to help you. Now that's the kind of enthusiasm you find in a large section of India. We are trying to channelize. I've already set up a meeting to meet him and see how he can help me in my work. We need to channelize our own energies to get more involved in this changing dynamic that the country is going through. I've often said that we also have to become whistleblowers. So if we see somebody doing wrong, we've got to talk about it. If in our industry, if she's in the textile trade, somebody is evading taxes, we should let the authorities know so that we can have a level playing field, honest business prevails, rather than just cribbing, crying, cursing the system and hoping it is somebody else's responsibility to stop that. I think if we all decide we will never pay a bribe, we will not encourage or allow anybody to cheat on taxes,
Right.
this country can be just completely a new story by 2022.
I don't want to digress and make this a political issue, but since you spoke quite significantly in your opening comments about motivated sensationalism, are you talking about comments that have been made about the state of the economy?
No. I'm talking about general stuff. There's so many things that come up which are irrelevant very often, sensationalized, and by the next day it's not even there anywhere. And nowadays with these online media
Social
houses,
media,
so-called
yes.
social media is still a different thing. The online media houses, you have a number of them who will write anything and get away with it because they don't even have to substantiate
do you
anything.
believe, like Harish Salve does, that social media needs to be regulated in India?
I don't think you need to regulate social media. I think collectively we as the citizens of India need to give a befitting reply to such motivated people.
You know, I do want to, I think Piyush is raising a really interesting point on the involvement of citizenry. Piyush, it's almost like you were listening to a discussion I was having half an hour ago
Okay.
in a conversation with young global leaders. And somebody asked me a really good question there. And I said, if each of you went back and spoke to 10 people about what can be done differently, that's 20 people here, that's 200 people you reached.
Right.
You can change the world with that kind of behavior as compared to waiting for someone else to do it.
Absolutely.
So I think he's raising a really important point, and this thing of being, you know, of creating the leadership you want,
Yeah.
of setting the trend, I could not be more supportive of what he just said.
You know, and I want to pick up on both these points and take this conversation forward. And let me start by asking you, Minister Goyal, because you spoke about a need for a mindset change as well as linking that to outcome. If I could ask you about whether we could change this L1 mindset that we live with in this country.
Yes,
And also, and I'll link that to corporate boards, because yesterday we've had the Uday Kotak Committee on Corporate Governance bring out its report saying that people who are qualified to be on corporate boards, have the domain expertise of that particular industry, etc., should be the ones who represent corporate boards. But, you know, this mindset that it has to be the lowest bidder, irrespective of whether they have the expertise, they have the competency, they have the skill. I mean, is it not time that we look for reimagining this template, reinventing this template for a better India?
Well, first of all, since you alluded to Uday's report, let me also tell you that I think he's gone completely off the mark here.
He's gone off the mark. Why?
That's right. And I'll explain why. I became the power minister of this country. I didn't know the P of power or the C of coal. And renewable energy was the farthest thing from my mind when I became a minister. IAS officers all over the country, many of them have done illustrious jobs. I don't think they have some domain expertise in what Sridharan didn't know what a metro looks like when he became the metro man of India. So, I mean, I don't think very often I tell people when they come to me and they say that, you know, this company doesn't have experience in manufacturing pipes, for example. We can't buy from them. I said, there is a process to determine if the pipes that they manufacture are good or bad. You do tensile testing. There are all sorts of testing available. But if everybody takes that mindset, he'll never be able to get into business. So Make in India or entrepreneurship and Startup India can be history from tomorrow. To my mind, you have to encourage diversity of opinion, diversity of experience. So if I'm running a steel unit, and I've run a steel unit, forgings, I didn't know a damn all of that. I'm a chartered accountant, right? So businessmen are supposed to keep their accounts honest and correct. Businessmen are, maybe if it's an engineer doesn't know what, Dhirubhai Ambani probably never went beyond a certain basic level of education. So I think there's a completely wrong thinking. Just education doesn't make a man any great or any expert in the field. And the most educated people run some of the biggest frauds that have happened in this country.
So is that the only reason why you
No,
believe
no.
that he's gone off the mark, or do you think other
Since you raised that,
recommendations as well?
I have not even gone into all the details. There are many things good, many things which I think are inappropriate. There's a good idea that a woman director should be compulsory. Great idea.
And an independent director.
That's also a good idea. But since you're raising the point, I can labor whatever little I've read on the television screen. He also spoke about the board themselves should decide the independent directors. Now, frankly, this is what is already happening. There's nothing rocket new in that. But that is where the problem is. When I run my board, I choose people who are going to be yes men, who are going to listen to me, who are going to go by what I say, and that's going to be my board. But that's the whole problem. The base problem is that only. So what he's recommending is that I get to choose who will be on my board, who are convenient for me to be on the board. So anyway, we are not discussing Uday's report. I'll talk to him tomorrow maybe about it. But the bigger issue is...
He just got a preview.
Yes, he did get a preview.
But Uday has been like a mentor for me for 25, 30 years. I love him. And therefore, I can take the liberty, and he takes the same liberty with me. When I go wrong, I know that Uday is there to tell me you're doing something wrong here. So I just said it because these were 2 or 3 things that I just picked up on the screen yesterday. So I'm not even suggesting don't pick enemies. But Rahul Bhai, I am saying that moment you are insisting that I will only have the right and I must have the right to pick my own board. That's what Uday has said in his report.
I'm going to have to call a timeout on this because this is not meant to be a conversation around Uday Kochak's recommendations. So let me go back again. Let me go back again to the mindset change that we were talking about, Mr. Goel, and how we can actually insist within government that the policies are outcome linked.
See, L1 is something again which is not easy to do away with, and for good and bad reasons. When you point out L1 is not good, you're talking of quality of service. Let's say if I want to take an architect, I certainly can't take it on an L1 basis. You know, when a PSU is disinvested and merchant bankers bid for it, and there may be some merchant bankers in this room, every time they bid 0. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Why do they do that? Because of 2 reasons. They make money on the side because of the investments that flow in from them, and they get some carry on the money that's invested. You know that very well. And the second is they want to up their league rankings. Correct?
Yeah.
Now, in that case, it's certainly we cannot do anything. Everybody is 0. I had, in fact, suggested to the DPUM secretary, which I usually do, like in the coal mines, that now you start asking them how much money you will pay us to be the merchant banker of a disinvestment to the government. But the bigger point is that, look, we also want probity and honesty in government.
No, I get that.
Beyond a stage, if we start messing up with L1, we are also going to land up with scandals and excuses of quality always becoming a cause for scandal. Therefore, there are established processes. You can create committees. You can create technical specifications which are robust and protect you from the riffraff. You can have 70% of the marks for technical, 30% for financial bids. There are ways in which you can reasonably protect. I personally am of the opinion you should have a technical spec which is strict, remove the shaft from the grain, and then allow them to bid on a financial parameter. Many people use the 70-30 or 50-50 principle. I personally believe it leads to more objectivity, and then people can manipulate transactions. I have so far avoided doing that.
Okay, so let me... You also rated jobs as your #1 concern.
Yeah, that was my single word.
In your opening session. So, you know, it's a mammoth task and it's a mammoth challenge. But you and I were having the conversation before we came out where you said that we must approach this in bite-sized solutions so that we can actually go after the problem and attack it. If I were to ask you, how do we attack this challenge so that we actually deliver on the outcomes, what would you suggest?
So my view is that the reason I said jobs is because of the whole issue of the informal, formal economy and getting workers into that so you can get productivity going, including for women. And if you do that the right way, you can get a great improvement in where we are. The thing about bite-sized chunks is the following. You look at what Piyush was talking about his situation in the railways. Piyush, how many days have you been the minister now?
32.
32. And he's not counting. But in those 32 days, he's trying to create a plan to create 1 million jobs. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Today, the World Economic Forum put out a report on tourism by this young lady in pink here. And what it says is that if you do the right things with tourism in India, you can get to create 1 million jobs in that sector. Yeah. Just look at this, 1, 1, 2. I mean that is bite-sized chunks. To get tourism to go, you shouldn't try and solve and boil the ocean of getting the whole of India to somehow, tomorrow morning, or 3 years from now, or 15 years from now, become tourism friendly. Let's pick 10 places and let's work on the infrastructure of those 10, not just to see the Taj, but to have other things to do when you go to Agra, to be able to have hotels you want to be with, to feel safe as a woman on the road, to be able to feel welcomed and not to be cheated upon by people, culturally, mindset. This is not different from what Piyush is saying and what Dipali was saying earlier. So that's what I mean by bite-sized chunks. Break the problem down into bite-sized chunks, create a process of measuring it, put color coding against it, saying, I'm working well on this one, not well on that one, and then go chase it down. I continue to believe that tourism is India's quickest return for jobs in the next 1 to 2 years. It's that much of an advantage. And I didn't understand that Piyush could generate $1 million. That's remarkable in the railways.
So I'll give you a simple thing. If I invest 150,000 crores, and if even 20% of that is labor cost, which I'm being very conservative by Indian standards, it's 30,000 crores. 30,000 crores, the railways people don't do that investment. It's all done through contracted and outsourced stuff. So that 20% is 30,000
So
crores,
track
3 lakh
laying and-
rupees per person at an average.
Right.
Some may be less, some may be more, is 1 million jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm spending that every year.
So that's the
By the way, I just want
bite-sized
to
chunks.
I want to give you why I said Jan Bhagiyadari or people's involvement.
yeah.
And why it should be a collective effort. Ma'am spoke about tourism, which he alluded to. In the railways, what am I doing? We have 276 saloons, including a saloon which I can use to go anywhere in the railway. Right? It's a beautiful, luxurious saloon. You may love to go on that someday. But we are not planning to use
But
those
I have to pay
saloons.
my MasterCard, right?
We are making sure that henceforth you'll have to pay. Right now, I can only give it to you as a favor.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But what we are doing is we are keeping those which are essential for any unfortunate accident or repair work or inspection work with the divisional managers, moving probably 150, 170 of them out of the divisions, creating luxury trains out of that.
And creating a
And I'll
tourist-
tell you the thinking.
Fantastic.
I'll have a train go from Delhi on the Budh circuit, Sarnath, Kushinagar, Gaya. And I'll tell you why I'm doing it. Because in those places we don't have very good hotel facilities, stay facilities. But these trains have beautiful staying facilities. So a Japanese can come on that train, stay in the night in that coach, good toilets, good everything. In the day, pay his respects at the Budh tourist spot. Again, come back in the night, go to the next place. So his hotel, his stay, his toilet, everything is well taken care of. I'll probably add 1 or 2 Japanese translators or whatever countries, Chinese translators. And there, lo and behold, you've got without doing anything else, you've created
So
infrastructure.
my point about this was bite-sized chunks. You
Yeah.
do that. That's one example. The ingenuity of this country will produce 5 more from that.
Well,
This
we-
is a get-
Shireen, when Prime Minister spoke from the Red Fort
Yes.
on 15th August 2014, his first address, my daughter was sitting on the ground below the Red Fort. She was, I think, that time all of 16 or 17. And that dialogue of the Prime Minister, that statement had a profound impact on her when he had said on that day that we are all the time telling our girls how to behave, how to look at boys or how to take care of themselves. Why don't we teach our boys how they have to behave, how they have to look at the other sex, what is proper, what is improper? And I was remembering that in our time in school, we used to have moral science classes. And I think it's not there in schools anymore. But if we were to try and introduce it, I don't know your channel, but many would be first off the block trying to tell us you're trying to force education or force a certain culture or force Indian tradition and heritage on the children. And therefore this whole political discourse in the country has become one where every good step also, which is in the interests of the people of India, is looked at with a jaundiced or a colored eye and then sought to be converted into a issue which more often than not has no relevance. There's nothing communal about it, nothing really political about it. But then if you try to teach moral science, you're trying to teach Hindutva, you're trying to teach Gita or whatever will come in, and you'll be back to square one.
Well,
That's the deal.
Yeah.
When the Prime Minister in that same 15th August 14 speech announced that within a year, we'll create a toilet for boys and girls
Right.
separately in every government school in the country. That was one time where probably L1 may not have been so strictly possible because you had 1 year to do
Sure.
430,000 schools
Yeah.
across the country, toilets in 430,000 schools. A lot of private sector companies came forward also. But that's where the government showed its true mettle also, in a way. The companies which were under power, coal and renewable energy at that time did 221,000 toilets in half, almost 121,000 toilets, 121,000 toilets. About 1/3 of them were done by just PSUs under that ministry. Now, after that, I realized what Ajay is saying. I realized that if we had, instead of doing that, we had partnered with the private sector, and we could have done a far better job in terms of quality. We could have maintained it far better, about which I saw problems later on.
Yeah.
So now, about a month ago, I had meetings with Tata Charities, Piramal's Charities, a lot of companies in Delhi, Nachiket more, a lot of people
Yeah,
came.
yeah.
Then last week, another 3-4 more charities came forward. I'm trying to see how we can leverage the same PPP model to get NGOs in the private sector and government spending, leverage each other.
great.
There's a huge amount of money we give out through our various programs,
Yeah.
be it Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, be it our maternity programs, be it our programs for education. There's huge amount of money spent, forget CSR, in
Yeah.
the normal course of social welfare schemes. So if the NGOs, and I find some really well-meaning people there, government schemes and our own CSR, if we can dovetail that, I think we can get a big bang for every buck that we spend. We can leverage and multiply manifold and also stop duplication.
Yeah.
Out of 8 or 9 trusts, 6 or 7 spoke about health, 5 spoke about education. So we are all working in silos. If we can dovetail all that, it can have a transformational impact.
Yes, because scale matters. But specifically on the need for public-private partnership to create social infrastructure, if I could broadly call it that, whether it's healthcare or education. And these have been experiments that various state governments have undertaken with the private sector, where you use the government infrastructure but get the private sector to actually run a school or run a hospital. The Niti Aayog, in fact, in its recent proposal, has suggested a PPP model where you use government infrastructure but it's actually given out to a private sector player. Do you believe that that is the idea for the future when we talk about improving the service that at the last mile? Do you think that that is going to be an idea that will be given currency by this government?
There's no one size fits all in these things. You have to be open to ideas across the board. I'll tell you a small thing. We wanted to start station development. Companies are not coming forward. They wanted to see if this experiment works. So in Gandhinagar, the government gave out an EPC contract and the station is being developed. A hotel will come up and the tendering has been done. And a good company has got the tender to manage that hotel when it comes out. We've done it already so that the furnishing can be to their taste.
So you're using the real estate of the station?
The real estate of the
To basically
station.
monetize it.
It'll be a beautiful station and a hotel on top.
Yeah.
Hotel given out on management contract like Hyatt and
Got it.
everybody
Sure.
takes.
Got it.
They take 3.5%. That's the tendered price on which it went. Same formula. Technical specs, 5 people or whatever were shortlisted.
Yeah.
And then in the financial bid, this company won. And once we have 3 or 4 such cases, then the general public will start taking interest. If EESL hadn't done the huge LED rollout, the private sector would never have reduced their prices by 90%.
Sure.
So I think it's every project has its own
Piyush, that's
best
back to
method.
the bite-sized chunks. If you do it in 10 places and it shows up as being a good idea, you can do it in 100 after.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's-
And that's
it's
what I
scalable
feel
and
we need to
replicable.
do.
Yeah.
We need to bring our problems down to things we can manage and deal with, solve for them, and then run with them.
So let me last 5 minutes get some audience questions in, and then let the minister leave. So let me get hands in the audience. Yes, Ratul, we've got Ratul Puri right here. If we can get the microphone across to him. Yes.
His question will be longer than 5 minutes.
This question goes out to anyone on the panel, and I'm Ratul Puri from Hindustan Power. Minister Goyal yesterday talked about trust and said trust is a critical factor. And I believe one of the key elements in restarting the investment cycle, creating jobs, doing all the good things that India needs to do, is to enhance trust that is there amongst all key stakeholders, the media, industry, government. How do we reestablish this element of trust, some element of trust that may have been lost? How do we go forward and enhance it and build upon it?
Well, 20 seconds, not 5 minutes. Your turn,
That's a
Piyush
good
Goel.
point. I think, for example, the finance minister had mentioned that if people start paying their taxes and we get more tax revenue, we can reduce the tax rates. If more and more people start self-policing, so let's say she's in a textile business, there are 10 companies. If she knows that there's one company which is cheating or two which are cheating, if she lets us know about it and we can stop that, then it will encourage everybody to start being honest. But if she allows that to continue, and God forbid that comes to the attention of the government, then what happens is one wrong step leads to everything becoming suspect. So I think that trust is something where everybody will have to put their foot forward. We in government will have to be more trusting of people that they are paying their taxes honestly. The industry or taxpayers will have to be more honest in terms of declaring their business and their accounts more honestly. And as I said, the media will have to be more trusting in terms of actually seeing, is there a mala fide or a bona fide? For example, we want to amend the Prevention of Corruption Act. The Prevention of Corruption Act today castigates you irrespective of whether you did it with the best of bona fides, though it went wrong, or you had some mala fide behind it. We are trying to amend it that only where you can prove mala fide, you should be taken to the cleaners, but bona fide decisions can go wrong.
Sure.
Similarly, in banking. After all, there are entrepreneurs with the best of interest. They started a business. Somebody can go wrong in business. That's why they're entrepreneurs in the first place. There is a risk associated with business. Now, if the world is going to look at every entrepreneur with a jaundiced eye, that he's cheated the bank or he's save and accept a few genuinely willful defaulters. But otherwise, if the world starts recognizing that failure is a integral part of success or business, I think it'll change, it'll bring back the mojo into the business, into
I have a different
industry.
angle to trust to back that question. In the financial inclusion space, we've done these 360 million people. I found every time we tried to work with governments and NGOs, they would think, why is a private sector company interested in this and what's in their agenda? That has changed because now we've done 360 million people who've come into it. We need that trust between the public and the private sector if the PPP is actually going to work. And that, mind you, that's a burden on the private sector as much as it is a burden on the public sector. This is not public sector doing it or not. This is, both of us need to do it.
Shireen, I can appeal to all the people in this room. Just so many people, if they apply their mind, what government can do, what people can do, what industry can do, what bankers can do, what media can do, to get back trust in the system. If everybody puts a one-pager on it, and maybe WEF or somebody can compile it, and come out with a small note on that, I promise you the government is open to listening to it.
All right. Well, we'll take that up.
That's a great idea.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, we've got a question there in the audience. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I'm Sugandha Munshi. I belong to Patna, Bihar, and representing Global Shaper here. So I have my question has two parts. It's a question come understanding I need to develop from the whole forum. We have launched Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. That's doing a very fantastic job in making people be the change you want to see in the world. Now, do you think it's a time to also launch a campaign equally, Bete Padhao and Beti Badhao?
Absolutely.
That's how.
We spoke about it.
Yeah, so that's kind of a campaign which also talks about men's socialization. The second aspect is about the women workforce. Agriculture is one of the greatest sectors in India. But when I work with women farmers, they are invisible. Their contribution is not being recognized. How do you think we can work together to make this challenge and bring a solution to this?
That's very much possible, ma'am. And again, I come back to those trusts who came and presented to me. Many of them are doing wonderful work when it comes to farmers. I'll give you a simple example. Devendra Fadnavis, Maharashtra's chief minister, along with the Tata Trusts, is running a program on Jalyuk Shivir, where they are creating small water bodies in remote areas in the state of Maharashtra, so that even if there is rain only for 2 days, the farmer is assured for the rest of the year he won't have a water shortage. Now the Tatas, Amit Chandra, many of us know him. Amit came up with a desilting program. It's a brilliant program. these water bodies often have silt accumulated over the years. That silt is like gold. If you desilt these ponds, not only are you expanding the water capacity, but that silt, when it goes into the farms, it's magnifying their productivity twice and thrice over. So their incomes are increasing. Now farmers are willing to pay money to take that silt. So it's becoming a self-financing program. You desilt, recover the money from selling that silt. You add to the water body over there, capacity, carrying capacity. So there are a lot of things that can be done which can truly impact farmers. And it's, again, people like us who understand, who've seen how Israel, for example, has 3 times our productivity, who know better ways to use fertilizer, for example, rather than just putting in more and more urea into the land, who can help educate farmers with soil health cards, drip irrigation, what's the best product to make depending on market forces. I'm trying to see if I can bring cold storage. Let's say in Nasik, all trains coming out of Nasik having cold storage in the onion season. And all trains going out of Himachal having a cold storage in the apple season. So it's a role where we can all contribute, both with ideas and many of us with implementation.
Okay. Quick question.
Can I leave? If they can come.
One final question, and then I think we will draw to a close because Dipali has a flight to catch as well. So the final question here this evening. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Roshan Raikar and I'm a global shaper. One basic query, that is, there is a lot of gap in communication between the government and the public. You know, the government is doing a lot of things.
Public as in the channel?
The people, okay, because there is a lot of gap in the communication. The people in such forums, you know, everybody are talking so many things, and then you know, we want to do a lot of stuff, but people are wondering on the ground that what's happening. You know, they have no clue what's happening. So this gap in the communication is a really big problem, and I really want to know what are your views on how to bridge this.
I can make a suggestion, gentlemen. You have a number of these youngsters involved with this WEF, right? I'm willing to have 5 of you, 7 of you, 10 of you spend a year in my office, help us create a communication strategy and actually implement it to convey, let it be a two-way traffic, to convey what we believe we are doing is right, and to hear the people's voice and help us maybe moderate what we are doing or modulate it and do it better. So if anybody, youngsters, want to contribute, write in to me. My mail ID is simple, which I read, Piyush Goyal, BJP, Goyal, Piyush Goyal, and add a BJP, that's my identity, at gmail.com.
Hey, Piyush, is this open for older people as well?
If Ajay, you are willing to come in, I promise you, in 3 years, we'll wind up MasterCard and Visa and take Baba Saheb Ambedkar's beam to the whole world.
You better think about this one now, Ajay. But so we've got homework at the end of day 2 of the India Economic Summit. A one-pager that Minister Goel expects from everyone here who's attended to put forward tangible ideas on how we can actually engage with the government and ensure that we're a robust, participative democracy. And anyone from the Shapers program who wants to intern with the minister, well, you've got his email address now, so rush in your applications to
Anuj
Piyush.
Gupta will contact you.
To Piyush Goel. Yes, Ajay.
I want to say one thing, which is Karan said something yesterday, which is very interesting. And he said, you know, if this was a Bollywood movie, we're at halftime. We want to get to the end and have a happy ending. I really want us to not forget the idea of India taking the leading role on building the international order, because India deserves that chance. Its time has come. We can do it. We need to do things like corporate governance, intellectual property, market access, these conversations, we can do it. I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. This is our chance. It will go away after that. Don't lose that chance.
Right. So Ajay used, or Karan used the Bollywood analogy. I'll end with the cricketing analogy. I guess we're in the slog overs now, and let's hope that...
No. This is not the slog overs.
No?
This is boom time. is the time to hit sixes
Seize the
and
time. Seize the
really go for the
So the
jugular.
heavy hitting
Absolutely.
starts now. All right, Piyush Goel, Dipali Goenka, Malvika, Ajay Banga, many thanks for joining us. Let me invite Chandrajit Banerjee, please, to say a few words before we wrap up.
Just wanted to thank everybody for making this last 2 days really eventful. And if we want to see an outcome of the discussions, and one great outcome before I came onto this table, before I came onto this dais, was the phenomenal balance that one saw, be it gender parity or be it the type of... Absolutely. Yeah. So, too, I think there's been a lovely discussions across different areas, and I'm not going to sum that up, but say that really there was a huge amount of attention and a glue factor which came in, the partnerships that one saw, partnerships between government, civil societies, other stakeholders, and I think everyone was willingly wanting to collaborate for a very different India. And I think and the international community's participation in wanting to make that happen has been so strong. It is one window of opportunity, we say, that India has. And if we don't get it, it won't come in another 60 years. So we are very hopeful, and we saw the world order really looking at India to really make it happen. It's not just the policymakers' responsibility. I think it's a combined responsibility of everybody. We'd want to work on that. Forum's engagement with India last 3.5 decades, phenomenal. And I think they have really helped take this India agenda around, and we really value that. And bringing in policymakers into really creating this agenda along with industry and other stakeholders have been extremely important. I want to thank the forum. Some of them, the stalwarts of the forum, are seated right here. Philip, Saritha, Murat, many others, and I think they are the ones who have been really championing India so very strongly. Just wanted to thank each one of you, not just the co-chairs, all the moderators, speakers, all those in attendance. This is the real time in India, and we'd like to take this forward with everybody together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.